just going to feel at ease?
I don't know. Mark can tell me.
That's perfect.
Perfect.
Can you use your phone, the app on your phone, to tell what it's looking at?
I could do, but
You
I
can.
don't just be looking
He's got
at
to
my phone.
present.
He's got to present, hasn't he?
I've got a cameraman here anyway. Got a camera guy.
Right, well that's 1 minute of presentation done.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay.
Go.
Okay. I'm Luke Holmes, as stated on the board, and my presentation, I haven't written my question as the thing. I've just put the broader audio production in video games as the title. So, all right, let's see what we can do here. So, what I'm going to talk to you about, right? I know there's a technique here. So I'm going to give you an overview of the project. I can just look at this. And then I'm going to do the journey of a single sound. And then I'm going to do a little demonstration, and then I shall open the floor to questions. Okay, so there are two halves of my presentation. I've called them solve et coagula, which is sort of alchemical terms for dissolving and rebuilding. That's more for my amusement than it is for anything else. So, the solve, my aim is to identify sounds and how they're used in video games, categorize them using a theoretical framework, and then analyze them in a musical way. I don't know if that's how you spell analyze. I'm going to live with it. And then coagula, which is the production end of the project, where I'm going to record / synthesize sounds. So I'm going to create my own versions of the things that I've been analyzing, build a video game environment, and stick them into it. Okay, so solve, the first half. The way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to play a lot of games, which I'm going to do anyway, so it's nice to call it work. And then whenever I feel an emotion, I'm going to sort of take note of it and see to what extent is sound contributing to this emotion. And then I'm going to record it using some tools and listen back over and over again and sort of analyze it in a musical way. So these are the equipment. So I have a variety of games consoles. I was telling Mark earlier that there's something wrong with my white balancing, so I have some very nice blue images here. So I got a variety of things running through into a Blackmagic capture card and then onto my PC with OBS, so that I can record anything that I view, and then I can look back at it later. And then I have this documentation device, which eagle-eyed audience members will notice is right there. And this is how I'm rather than writing stuff down, because that's just barbaric in 2018. I'm just going to talk into that contraption, and that is going to be how I produce my written portion. So in terms of the theoretical framework, as in what I am looking for with these sounds, I suppose I'm using this butchick wheel jobby, which is all the sort of human, the range of human emotions, the spectrum, but I'm only really looking at this sort of second circle. I don't know if anyone can read any of those, but they are the characters from Pixar's Inside Out, if that makes it easier. And then I'm going to categorize the sounds, as in where do they fit in terms of what a sound is in a video game. Much the same as, I'm sure you're familiar with diegetic and non-diegetic sound in film. It's the same sort of principle. I do currently have this FGAMC, or Figma, framework, but I have just been looking at another one, which is mentioned here, the IEZA, which I think might be better for my needs. I could actually, probably, pull up so this is it. As you can see, it's much sort of simpler, and so I feel like that's all I require for the purposes of categorizing the audio. Is this going to save me back to the beginning? It's not. And then music theory. Got a nice little image to demonstrate. Yeah, so what I'm looking at with the sounds, very specifically the sort of the technical aspects of sound. So I've put musically theoretically, which sounds like a mouthful. So I mean, but only in a basic way. I'm not going nuts. So a major, minor, ascending, descending, and then I put instrumentation in inverted commas, because a lot of, obviously on the early consoles, the instrument is the sound chip, but they're manipulated in such a way to sort of emulate certain different instruments. And then effects that might be layered onto the sound to give it some more weight. I've given a couple of examples, reverb and chorus. But what I'm not looking at, which is just as important, is I'm not going to look into any kind of psychological or neurological reasoning for this. I'm not going to say, how is the sound invoking emotion? What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, the sound is invoking an emotion. What is it doing while it is doing that? I don't know if that, I'm not going to try and go back in human evolution and work out why certain sounds have certain effects. Okay, so these are a couple of problems that I've run into as it's sort of philosophical issues with the analysis. So I'm trying to think whether the sound is evoking the emotion in the player or communicating to the player that emotion. So if I don't know, Donkey Kong is yelling, I can tell that Donkey Kong is angry, but I'm not angry. Whereas sort of the sound of Sonic dying in the Master System Sonic 1 makes me angry, but that's sort of context dependent. It makes me angry because I've heard it so many times at inconvenient moments, and so now I'm angry. But that sound in and of itself is not angering. So that's something that I'm struggling with at the moment, trying to sort of get my head around what I'm trying to get from it. And then obviously the subjectivity versus objectivity. I am, as a reflective practitioner, doing this, but I'm sort of going, this is making me feel this way, but does that mean that it makes everyone feel this way? And that's a difficult thing for me to say as a subjective individual. Oh, and we're on to the next section. Okay, so coagula. This is where I'm actually producing something, my version of it. So I'm going to record audio. It's really hard to not just read this thing. I want to elaborate. Record audio, manipulate audio, match the analysed sounds. This is sort of the most important part of it, to try and sort of match what the game sounds are doing that I've been looking at to match the emotion. And then insert the game sounds into a video game environment. So my equipment for this, I've got this nice little audio recorder, and then so I'm going to take the sounds that I record there. I'm just recording anything that I can get my ears on, whatever the terminology is there. And then I'm going to take them into the Mac, because I've got Logic Pro 10 on the Mac. I've got a nice MIDI keyboard. Oh yeah, look, did a little Logic Pro 10 thing there. And then, once I've got the sounds, over to the PC, into the Unreal Engine, to create this sort of video game audio environment. So this is what I've done in Unreal as my environment. So the idea is that I've got the Plutchik wheel in the center. So each of these strands is going off and pointing to a different emotion. So each little hub is going to be the sound that represents that emotion, so the player can sort of go down and hear it. So we've got a couple of you might be able to see that there are two spheres. So this is the attenuation of the sound. So within the middle sphere, you hear the sound at full volume. And then in the outer sphere, as soon as the player enters that, the sound will start to fade in. So the further out you are, the quieter it is until you're in the center when it's at full volume. I was looking at middleware, so I've got Fmod Studio and Wise here, which are ways of adding sound banks to the Unreal Engine. So, but the more I played with these, the more I realized that they're not really suiting my needs for this exercise. So they're more for sort of randomization. So what you can do is you can create a sound bank and have 90 footsteps. So then every time your character lays a foot down, it will alter the sound. It will just play a random one of those things, so that because when you walk, not every footstep sounds the same. So it adds more immersion, it makes it feel more real. So I'm probably going to use one, maybe Fmod, because I know that the educational license for Wise has run out. So that points me at that. But again, that's just for sort of immersive purposes, which will probably aid me in that capacity. But in terms of the emotional impact, I don't think it has much sway.
I just say that's 10 minutes.
How long do we have?
Let's keep going, but just let me know.
Do we have 10 minutes?
Up to 15.
Up to 15, okay, right, let's rock it. So, this is the journey of a single sound. So, I've selected trust. I've circled it there with a nice pink circle. Boom. Okay, so this is the sound that I identified as communicating trust. Now, we haven't actually tested the sound on this so far, so we shall see what happens. It's coming from my laptop. So, everyone hear that?
Yeah.
So if you've ever played Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, this is the fairy fountain. Now you are safe in this area. Nothing is going to hurt you. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get more health off this fairy. So the music that's playing at the same time, I feel like I don't want to talk over it because now you can't hear it. But it feels sort of gentle, it's kind of nice. And again, so you feel totally safe in this area. And I think the sound is contributing heavily to that. Oh God, do I have to stop this to go on to the next thing? Ah. Okay, so on my little categorization board, I think it fits here. In that it is a metaphorical thing. It's non-diegetic. It's or extra diegetic, you might say. It's audio that is not meant to be there in the world. And then in terms of what's happening musically, it's sort of, I know it's not a real harp, but it sort of emulates this harp sound with descending minor arpeggios. If you're familiar with that, doesn't matter. And it feels dreamlike, gentle, and it's non-diegetic. Right. And then, according to this, I should open Audacity. So, this is where I produce my own version of this, which you might not be able to hear. We'll find out. So this is my attempt. It sounds maybe a little more sinister, but it's neither here nor there. So this is some sounds that I've recorded. There's some crickets chirping, there's some birds singing, sort of natural sounds that I recorded from the garden. And then there's me playing a digital piano on which I am playing sort of, again, descending minor arpeggios with it, this kind of like, I don't know what it is, it's kind of like a glockenspiel, but it's very high, so I try to make it sort of very high up on the keyboard. I try to make it as gentle as possible. Open Audacity. And then I imported that sound sort of just directly into the Unreal Engine, and then just set it to loop over and over again while you're within this sphere. So I think because I'm running out of time, I think I may only have So if I go into Unreal, and there we go. This is me. So you can see on the thing. So this is trust. So this is the way that I need to go. And I'm going to be quiet for a second so that you can hear. If I run away. And I guess that's it from me talking. Are there any questions? Yes, the gentleman in the check shirt.
I have a question. Your method for introducing sound to any players using this environment is for it to kind of fade in as
Yes.
you approach the relevant area. Have you given any thought to the impact of maybe different types of introductions? So you might better introduce fear, surprise, shock with a
Yeah.
sudden.
So one of the ones on the wheel is I think I just passed it actually.
Surprise.
There's fear. Where is surprise?
It was back where you started.
Oh, it would be, wouldn't it?
You know, right,
Sadness. There you go, surprise. So yeah, so I feel like in order to have surprise be effective, there shouldn't be any fade in. It just needs to
Okay.
smack you straight in the...
Ears.
Yeah.
Mark, why did you pick minor arpeggios for trust? Didn't you also
I know, that was interesting. I initially wouldn't have thought of that. I would have expected it to have been a sort of major arpeggios, because traditionally that's, if you're not familiar with music theory, the most basic level is major happy, minor sad. But that was what Legend of Zelda used. They were descending minor arpeggios. So I went against what would be my instinct for if I was just producing something that represented trust by myself and deferred to the judgment of Shigeru Miyamoto.
What about though, you see how, when you've got your flower wheel and you've got sort of, say, I can't remember exactly what became before trust and then what follows trust. There might be levels where you
There are.
shift key and modulate backwards and forwards to get that feeling that you've got a relationship between those
I have considered that. However, I think that suddenly becomes a much bigger thing beyond the scope of what I can produce within the amount of time. So I'm thinking of just greying out all the other sections and just going, because that's the one that I'm looking at, the inside out characters. Here.
Do you not, this is probably good, graying out, just I don't know if your Photoshop will change it, but that little area just changed to blue, just like trust, and then that fear and surprise.
Yeah, probably. I mean, this you can see that it looks awful with just the pure black. I kind of just did that because I was having some sort of glitching.
I like it.
Some sort of like shader issue. You can sort of see it there,
Flickering.
but because there were different colours at the other point, that was far more pronounced. So currently it's all black, just so that it sort of looks nice and doesn't flash in my face every time I'm playing with it. But this isn't going to be this is a prototype.
Can I ask, one of your key concepts for evaluation is the evoking versus communication. So picking up on what Suki just said about the minor key, so the minor key to me would invoke an emotion, but also hearing that sound when you see the fairy is a sign
Yeah.
of that trust. So is it a
Well,
linear thing, or is there a scale and a kind of spectrum of, or
That-
do you need to kind of categorise within that?
That's another thing that's sort of dodgy about the idea of sort of context dependency. As in, hearing that sound is one aspect of the whole of that experience inside the fairy fountain. You're looking at the fairy. She doesn't look threatening. The area looks quite nice. So it's tough to try and work out whether I could truly invoke an emotion without context, because that's sort of what this is, and that's sort of the experiment.
Okay, great. That's a great answer. Just following on from that, I suppose, there's a French audio theoretician called Michel Chion who breaks it down into what he calls the causal, the semantic, and the reduced.
Okay.
Have you tried, the causal is about sounds which are obviously identifying something.
Yeah.
So the sound is linked to something that the audience needs to know about. The semantic is about what you're talking about, evoking a feeling of deliverance. And the reduced is when you look at taking the sound but having to analyse it in context of other